Welcome to Founders Future, a podcast powered by Closers.io, where we dive deep into the journeys of innovative entrepreneurs and explore the road ahead for them and their companies. I'm your host, Michelle Saeed, and in each episode, we will explore the founding journeys of some of these leaders. And today we're excited to have Floor Blindenbach, the founder of Organizing4Innovation, joining us. Floor is a PhD in innovation management with a wealth of experience in helping professional service firms turn innovation into a competitive edge, especially in the age of generative AI. With Organizing4Innovation, founded in 2014, Floor has been instrumental in guiding firms through transformative changes, ensuring that their investments in AI and new workflows deliver real results. Story and to discover how Organizing4Innovation is shaping the future of professional services. So with that being said, Floor, welcome to Founders Future.
Thank you, Misha, for having me. Yeah, really appreciate it.
Absolutely. We're excited to have you here and learn more about your story. So with that being said, let's dive in. For the listeners and the audience, take us back to the beginning. What specific problem in the professional services industry, perhaps around innovation management or AI adoption, inspired you to start Organizing4Innovation?
What triggered me is already like more than 20 years ago, or perhaps even longer. I always wanted to make the planet greener. And so studied chemical engineering and worked in a large engineering firm and was soon recognized for always coming up like with better ideas. They made me performance consultant, what they made it back then, which basically was an innovation manager. And to be honest, there were plenty of ideas, like fun workshops and stuff like that, but not a single one came to practice in that first year. So it was like, there's a fundamental problem here. So that kind of has driven my career for the past, I would say, 20 years. And I went so far to do a PhD on the topic. So I went to the business school to better understand, like, what's the problem? And from that started a long journey, you can say, from looking first in engineering firms, then it became project-based firms, and then it became the professional services. And 3 moves across the ocean, I have had the pleasure to work with engineering firms, in healthcare, with law firms. So I truly have experience across like different professional services. And the challenges are, I think, everywhere very similar. You have busy providers that have state-of-the-art knowledge. And if you want to change anything in these organizations, you somehow need to get them on board. It's their workflows that you're impacting. And that is only like generative AI made that problem only so much more present. So how do you get people that are already super successful? How do you help them to become even more successful and change what they're doing while they are super busy earning today's money? So it's not like in manufacturing firms where you can outsource it to others. You have to do it basically in a hot environment. So that's what I've worked on over the past, basically my entire career.
Phenomenal. No, I love the fact that you've tied a lot of your background and experiences through your PhD to really create better just efficiencies and productivities within the professional services landscape, which is great. So let's dive into the present time now. Walk us through exactly how Organizing4Innovation's offer has evolved since you started, and how do you structure what you do for your clients? What are some of the services that you offer? Because we do have some potential clients that may be tuning into this episode and they'd like to maybe get in touch and find out more about what it is you do.
Oh, thank you for asking. Yeah. So we started out as a consultancy. I just had ran a very successful program at a hospital and it was like, I want to scale this. And I always had in mind, like, I want to scale this with a platform or tool. And after a few false starts, we started building the tool, thanks also to a grant of the state of Virginia. That tool worked really well, like we called it the steering wheel. And it was basically a combination of project management, innovation management, and online education to guide these busy professionals to helping them scope the project, create the business case without them having to think about all these new concepts and just ask them a series of questions tailored specifically to their needs. And that worked really beautifully. And so at the end of last year, we ran into an issue about the reporting. So we were redoing that. And I was like, if we would just use like generative AI, we basically have rack data, like we could make much nicer reports than the hard-coded reports that we were having trouble with. And that made me think, was like, but what if I use generative AI to even create the end product? That was for me like a difficult moment because basically ChatGPT could do in seconds what we helped our clients do in weeks. Clearly, the quality of few prompts wasn't the same as like the structured method that we provided, but being in the field of innovation management, I realized, oops, we are being disrupted here. And I think it was thanks to all the knowledge I have about what it means to be disrupted that it made me pause and made me realize like anything that I put further in developing this platform basically is bad money after, is good money after bad money. So we took the very hard decision to pull the plug and basically reconfigure and rethink what we, how to proceed from what our clients needed and how to do that better. Fortunately, we had some clients that traveled this journey with us, so that was very helpful. And we realized that while ChatGPT can do, it takes a bit of prompting skills to help it to create a valuable business case, no doubt about that. But if you have that information and ask it to do pre-mortems or help you with brainstorms, or do client analysis, like SWOT analysis, so the how-to no longer is of any value. It is, but knowing which questions to ask when, that definitely is a challenge. And we've always helped create a competitive edge. So we're just now, okay, we just need to refigure and reconfigure what we do. And that's basically like using generative AI tools is one thing. Buying them is easy. Using them is already more tricky. And then creating that competitive edge, that's really difficult. And that's what we now help firms with. And we are on our own journey again to see like where we are now, and by pivoting our services, like how can we scale what we are currently doing. But I've learned over time only scale when you have a scaling problem. And so basically we're a little bit back in consulting mode at the moment. And we hope soon to have a nice scaling problem again, that we can put a generative AI solution to work to help others create a competitive edge with generative AI, just like we are currently doing ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to say it's phenomenal that you're offering this to your clientele as well. And a lot of those external mechanisms are being applied internally within your own organization. But I would assume feeding the information to the AI can also help with enhancing memory in several ways. And hopefully that's helped at least with streamlining a lot of thinking and the prompt engineering, at least because you guys are using it so often. I'd love to learn more about the way in which Organizing for Innovation acquires clients. How are you getting in front of your ICP? What's been the most effective channels for landing clients? Has it been LinkedIn, referrals, like your own professional network? If you can walk us through what your experience has been more on the acquisition side, I'm sure our listeners would appreciate it.
Yeah, I think the word of mouth is always the best. Like when people hear what you've done for others, that really helps. Sometimes like with partnerships organizations, or like when you have spoken for a conference and then have like clients to help you there to support that what you're saying is actually true. That those have been a few things that have been, I would say, most successful. We have tried doing like outreach, cold outreach, blogging, education, training programs. I think all of that has been less effective, and in part also we are not selling cookies, so to speak. We are selling something that is, a lot of firms are not like, they don't know what they don't have at the moment. So they have a problem, but express it in different ways. That makes it slightly more difficult. Think about like generative AI. People think about it like, oh, I need a training course. We know that like doing any training course on generative AI will go in here, go out there, and people will like, I think absorption rates it's ridiculously low. So that's not the way to learn. And we know that if you really want to start using generative AI, it's like a transformation, and it's like changing habits. But no one would be searching for like, how do I change my generative AI, or how to make it? Perhaps someone will search, how do I make it a daily habit? But even that. So we have, in that sense, had to be much more one-on-one in our personal context and selling more the problem, like, hey, do you have generative AI adoption issues? And that way get into the door.
Hmm.
Yeah.
With the acquisition strategy in place, I'd love to learn more about some of the sales strategies as well that have been effective in generating a lot of these partnerships so that you can deploy generative AI mechanisms into external organizations. Do you have a dedicated sales team in place, or is it just yourself right now involved in a lot of these conversations with firms? What is the actual strategy right now, more on the sales side?
Yeah, pipelines are absolutely probably all about that. And I think these days it's even more important to get people to engage with you and start to trust you slowly over time. No one is going to, get you into and what is a 5-figure engagement out of the gates. That takes time. And so what we have learned is, for instance, like talks or they've somewhere met you, then you start with a low end engagement and then you slowly move them up the ladder. So that's been for us the most effective way. And we've also seen like some of our clients, take for instance in the generative AI age, many people they prefer routines and are very task oriented. So they are very far from where we would like them to be, is like more open to experiment and try new things and more open to focusing like on business outcomes. So you need to move them slowly into that direction. So that sometimes requires simpler and low end products to move them from and meet them where they're currently at to where you would like them to be. And again, with the new setup, we are experimenting with a few different programs. Amongst one is to really help, like in 4 weeks, to use generative AI and make it a habit and save you at least 1 hour a week. So that's like the type of challenges we love to engage with, so that they can see that ROI that comes from, you don't change or innovate to innovate, but you want to get accomplish something.
Yeah, I was just about to say, I think that is such a powerful hook because time is money at the end of the day for so many CEOs, leaders, founders, entrepreneurs. And if you're able to really get down to the basics and show them what those outcomes are going to be rather than going through the process. So it's a language and a conversation everyone would love to have. But I love the fact that rather than looking at trying to solve everything within the business, you're really focused on how do we break through the mindset and how do we get leaders to be a lot more iterative to change and offering the simpler products, like you said, is all about building trust at the end of the day. And if you're able to get your foot in the door, per se, in that sense, and really show them the value just through some of those smaller actions, it really does create a snowball effect later on, right? As you build the relationship moving forward and, even expand those types of accounts. With this growth that you're building, the runway looks super exciting for 2025 from what it sounds like. What's the biggest challenge that you're facing right now within growing organizing for innovation? Is it, I know right now you said not a scaling problem necessarily, but is it scaling fulfillment, also refining acquisition, maybe tailoring some of the strategies as well on the sales side? What does that look like? What are you most focused on solving to keep the momentum going?
I think the most difficult thing is to focus. There's so much that you can do, but only a few things that you should do as a business owner, and especially because we have pivoted. So to like figuring out like what's the best bang for our bucks, where can we create most of that momentum, as you said, that's currently where we are figuring. We're picking up some really good signals, so I think we're on the right track there. But that's that exciting, but also a little bit scary. Okay, this works, and then so how do we move from here and where to focus on next, and not trying to do too many things at the same time. I think that is. I always have more ideas than I or we ever can execute, to like rein those in and focus on basically practice what we preach, is like trying these small experiments, and if there's momentum, keep going. Don't give up too soon. But if you don't see momentum, then of course, then change and hop on to something else. But it shouldn't be like a little bit there or a little bit there, to be really stay focused and work on the successes that you have.
Now, if you could boil it down to, what that exactly looks, what are the top priorities looking ahead to grow organizing for innovation over the next 6 to 12 months? What are some of the new initiatives that you're excited about? Some of the things in the workflow that you're excited about implementing in the organization in order to really achieve that success and really dial down the focus?
That's some of the new low end programs, and I call them low end because they're just lower tickers. They're like under the $1,000 range. So the program that I mentioned, where we're going to help professionals, like whether it's attorneys or physicians or engineers, or hopefully also in the finance industry, but people who have seen, like, they know they need to use generative AI, that it will help them, but they just don't have time to sit through a course. And then in 4 weeks' time, help them turn generative AI in a daily habit. That's something we are super excited about, and we're focused on like marketing that, pushing that out to like these different markets. We currently, because we just have a strong presence there, working with reaching out to law firms, getting them interested. So that's a program where I can see like that's at the bottom of our pipeline. But once we have gone, once generative AI is a daily habit, that's a prerequisite to then go to the next step is, so how do you then change your workflows and start using some, agentic workflows to create that competitive edge with generative AI. So it's like building those stepping stones. And I think that will really help us to grow faster, quicker, if that makes sense.
Really focusing in on providing more simpler products and focusing on what that first area of development looks like for an organization, and then looking into the workflow, right? The bigger picture and some of the more higher leverage impacts that can be made. So that's super exciting. Now, how do you see the landscape of innovation management and AI adoption in professional services changing in the next few years? And how is Organizing for Innovation positioning itself for that type of future?
It will dramatically change. And that's, I think, the shock I had in December. What kept me afloat was that I realized, like, hey, if we are going through such a disruptive event, this will hit every single professional service provider, but it will also hit many innovation managers. Because a lot of the work that I did in the past, is explain how to do things, like a pre-mortem, like no, very few people know even what it is. So that was the bread and butter. How do you execute these projects and helping people along? You can Google that now, and not Google, I still call it. But you can use now any generative AI model to help you not only ask it what you need to do, but even ask you execute these tasks. So the how becomes less relevant, but what still remains very relevant is knowing which questions to ask when. And that, I think, will put you in a much more at a more strategic level with the services that you provide, but it will drastically change what where your value is, so to speak. We went ourselves through this shift, and I think that we'll see, and we're already seeing that in the marketplace. Many attorneys, accountants, even some physicians, they will all go through that same realization. Oh, my value lays in something different. And I think it's also very cool, because for most of us, that means that you can up your skills and focus more time on the things that are more fun. But I think as a business owner, that higher level end stuff, it's of course more difficult to sell. And that's why I mentioned, like, we need to build that bridge, to get our clients to where we want them to be, but also to build that trust that we'll get that more strategic work.
Yeah, absolutely. Higher leverage activities and that strategic thinking and thinking about the questions to ask, right? These are all very important things in creating processes and workflows as you specialize in. I think that was great because right now, there's a lot of buzz around prompt engineering and taking prompt engineering courses, really becoming like an AI expert, regardless of whatever industry you're in. It's pretty groundbreaking to see that you're already providing the thought leadership to many SMBs, and as you said, lawyers and accountants, a lot of the smaller businesses where it's not really apparent and it's not even something they necessarily learn through their educational pursuits. So glad to see that's something you're doing.
Yeah, I would be even more specific. What is really challenging for them is that so far you have learned, like, all of us have learned, like, okay, here you have a pen. I'm just taking a pen as an example. This is a pen. This is how you open it. You hold it in your left or your right hand, depending on whether you're left or right. And this is how you write. So typically we've been very prescriptive in how to use IT tools. And now we're basically saying, with these generative AI models, we say, okay, here you have something. We call it a pen.
Mm,
And you can do many things with it, but
mm,
you figure it out.
yeah.
And now we suddenly hope that people can make that switch and start to explore how they can use, and I'm just using a stupid pen as an example because it was laying in front of me. But I think that is, so we are asking something that's deeply difficult for people. And I think teaching them how to do prompts is not overcome that challenge of getting people from that comfort zone. I want routines. I want to know what is expected of me. I want to follow basically a recipe, to pushing them more towards explore. Just ask the tool itself if you don't know what to do. Like, that's really a challenge. It's been fascinating to be part of that journey, and also to, even today, someone said, "Oh, Floor, I was so against generative AI." And now I'm so excited. So to really see them go through that transition, but it is a transition. And I think the more we realize it is a transition, the sooner that you will be more proficient in these tools.
Yeah, absolutely. You're reframing a lot of mindsets through this way. And like you said, there's so much out there right now on AI and the buzzword, like I said, but where do professionals start, right? How do you provide them with the right tools so that they can start to tailor it to what they really need and they're not overwhelmed? Because when there is all this information, it can almost be a detractor. It's almost as if there's like a bottomless pit and you really don't know where you're aiming at the end of the day. So I love the fact that you're on a mission to solve that and really like fill in that missing link right now.
Yeah. So would you have, given that your expertise is in marketing,
Yeah.
to mention one challenge that is related to that? Since AI is such a hype,
Mm,
on the one hand, we benefit from that hype because otherwise we wouldn't exist. Like, it makes that there is buzz. At the same time, because we solve a very specific problem in that hype, it is sometimes difficult to get heard, so to speak, and to stand out. So any suggestions there for how to do that?
yeah, absolutely. I'm going to talk about that off the record because I don't want to give the secret sauce away to our listeners who are tuning in as well. But we'll talk about that just in a few minutes before we do wrap up because the bright lights are on you. But I do have a few thoughts there, and there are a lot of ways that, from an acquisition perspective, can start to use a lot of your storytelling, a lot of your expertise to bring in the right types of ICPs who can align and see that, right, without you having to put too much into the conversation to realign for those mindsets. Now, one more question as we're in the lightning round right now, and we will wrap up. What's the best piece of advice that you've received about building a business around innovation management and AI consulting? And this is more for the listeners and some of the founders that are looking to follow in your footsteps and they'd like to hear more about what you can offer to them.
Ooh, that's difficult. But what I always keep in mind, what I took away from the many very useful like Y Combinator videos, is build things that don't scale. Don't worry too much about the scaling part.
Mm,
Because I think if you solve a problem and solve it well, you will create a scaling problem, and then you will figure out ways to solve that scaling problem. So I think that's a very true advice, and we often scale too early. I've been guilty of that myself as well. And then you end up very likely to build solutions for problems that don't exist yet,
mm.
and hence the solutions won't be perfect. Yeah, solve real problems first. That I think is perhaps the golden tip. Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely said. If you focus on the process, if you focus on making a great service and product, that in itself will do a lot of that heavy lifting for you. And I think for some of our listeners, you'll be very surprised once you get your first client, once you start getting into the right rooms and you're passionate about what you do, evidently as you are, you'll see a network of people, community build. They'd want to find out more because they see that authenticity. No, I love the fact that you're setting yourself up for success and it's such an amazing runway for growth going into 2025. So hopefully we'll be able to keep following your story and seeing the mission unravel and how you're deploying generative AI into SMBs and some of the other various industries out there. That wraps up another insightful episode of Founders Future. Floor, thank you so much for sharing your expertise and vision with us. To our listeners, if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe to Founders Future wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. You can also find some more resources and insights at closers.io, where we're dedicated to helping businesses accelerate their growth through trained appointment setters and world-class sales systems. Until then, keep climbing and innovating, and we'll see you all on the next one.